I used to be invisible in my own family. My younger sister Victoria, on the other hand, was their golden masterpiece. Everything I touched seemed to crumble, while everything she did turned to gold in their eyes. It started small when we were kids. She got the bigger bedroom because she needed space to study. Her piano recitals were mandatory family events, while my track meets were just running around. When she got into law school, my parents threw her a party and invited half the neighborhood. When I got into business school, my dad said, "Well, let's hope you actually finish something for once." That comment stung because he knew exactly what he was doing. I dropped out of my undergrad program during my junior year after having a complete mental breakdown. The pressure of being the eldest, the constant comparisons, the feeling that nothing I did would ever be enough had finally crushed me. I spent 3 months barely leaving my apartment, surviving on cereal and the kindness of my roommate who kept bringing me groceries. My family's response? Disappointment. Not concern, not how can we help you, just pure, cold disappointment. Rachel's always been fragile. I overheard my mother telling her bridge club friends one afternoon. I'd come home to pick up some books I'd left behind. Not like Victoria. Victoria has drive, ambition. She's going places. I stood in the hallway, frozen, listening to my own mother erase me. That was 8 years ago. 8 years since I walked out of that house and never looked back. 8 years since I changed my professional last name from Montgomery to my grandmother's maiden name, Chen. 8 years since I stopped answering their calls, stopped checking their emails, stopped existing in their world. And in those 8 years, I built a life they knew nothing about. The invitation came through my business partner, Coordin. We'd co-founded Rising Tide, a nonprofit that provided mental health resources and career coaching to people who'd dropped out of school or failed at their first businesses. We'd helped over 2,000 people get back on their feet. I'd also published a book about recovering from family trauma and toxic achievement culture that had quietly become a bestseller in self-help circles. "Rach, you're not going to believe this," Coordin said, bursting into my office at our Seattle headquarters. "The Montgomery party just confirmed. They want the full platinum package for their 30th anniversary. This is huge for us. It could lead to so many more corporate connections." My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "The Montgomery party?" "Yeah, Kenneth and Patricia Montgomery. Big deal lawyer family. Their daughter just made partner at some fancy firm. They're throwing this massive anniversary bash at the Fairmont and want us to handle all the coordination." Coordin was practically bouncing. The deposit alone could fund our summer scholarship program. Kenneth and Patricia. My parents. I set down my coffee carefully, buying time to think. My hand was shaking. "Coordin, I need to tell you something." But looking at his excited face, at how much this meant to our organization, I couldn't. Not yet. Besides, it had been 8 years. I'd lost 40 pounds, grown my hair from a mousy brown bob to long auburn waves, dressed completely differently. I wore contacts now instead of those thick-framed glasses. I'd learned to carry myself with confidence instead of shrinking into corners, and I used Chen professionally. The chances of them recognizing me were slim. "Never mind," I said. "That's amazing news. When is it?" 3 weeks. December 10th. My birthday. Of course it was. They'd always held their anniversary celebration on my birthday, never acknowledging that it meant I never got my own day. Victoria's birthday got its own separate party every year. Mine was just absorbed into their celebration like I was just an accessory to their marriage. "I'll handle the planning personally," I heard myself say. Coordin looked surprised. "You sure? You usually delegate the events. This one's special. I want to make sure it's perfect." Over the next 3 weeks, I threw myself into planning the most spectacular anniversary party Seattle had ever seen. Every detail had to be flawless. I told myself it was for Rising Tide's reputation, for the connections, for the donation they'd promised. But deep down I knew I was proving something. To myself, maybe, or to the ghost of the girl I used to be. I coordinated with the Fairmont's event team, arranged for a string quartet, designed a menu that accommodated every possible dietary restriction, created a photo timeline of my parents' marriage that conspicuously featured Victoria in nearly every family photo from the last decade and me in almost none from the first 2. Looking at those photos hurt more than I expected. There I was at 8 years old, gap-toothed and smiling, holding a happy anniversary sign I'd made. There I was at 13, already starting to fade into the background as Victoria beamed in her private school uniform. And then, fewer and fewer pictures of me until I disappeared altogether. The evening of December 10th arrived. I dressed carefully in a sleek black cocktail dress, my hair swept up in an elegant twist, minimal jewelry, professional, polished, unrecognizable. The Fairmont's Crystal Ballroom was transformed into a winter wonderland, all silver and white and ice blue lighting. Guests began arriving at 7, and I stationed myself near the entrance with my tablet, checking names off the list and directing people to their tables. At 7:15, my parents arrived. My breath caught as I saw them walk through the door. My father, still tall and commanding in his expensive suit. My mother, perfectly coiffed and dripping in diamonds. And behind them, Victoria, looking like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine in a designer gown I knew cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Welcome," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery. Everything is ready for you. Your daughter looks lovely." My mother barely glanced at me. "Thank you. Where are we supposed to go?" "I'll show you to the head table." I gestured toward the raised platform at the front of the room, walking ahead of them, hyper-aware of their presence behind me. "Victoria, darling, did you invite Marcus?" my mother was saying as we walked. "Of course, Mother. He wouldn't miss it. He's so excited to meet everyone." Victoria's voice had that same self-satisfied tone I remembered. "His family's law firm is one of the biggest in Vancouver. Daddy's already talking about potential partnerships." "That's my girl," my father said warmly. "Always thinking strategically. Not like some people who just chase pipe dreams." I felt the old familiar ache in my chest but pushed it down. I wasn't that person anymore. I didn't need his approval. "Here we are," I said, indicating their table. "Champagne will be served at 7:30, dinner at 8. If you need anything, I'm Rachel Chen, your event coordinator. Don't hesitate to ask." My mother's eyes flicked over me dismissively. "Chen? That's an interesting choice." "It's my grandmother's name," I said truthfully. "How ethnic," she said in that tone that wasn't quite an insult but wasn't quite a compliment either, before turning away. I walked back to my station, my legs feeling weak. They hadn't recognized me, not even a flicker. I'd stood right in front of my own parents and they'd looked through me like I was furniture. The party progressed smoothly. I coordinated the champagne service, signaled the quartet, ensured the photographers captured every moment. I watched from the sidelines as my parents held court, accepting congratulations and well wishes from Seattle's legal and business elite. I found myself near the dessert table when I heard my mother's voice carrying across the room. She was talking to a group of women I didn't recognize, her voice projecting in that way that wasn't quite loud enough to be rude but was certainly intended to be heard. "We're just so blessed with Victoria," she was saying. "Partner at 25. Can you imagine? She's been offered positions at 3 different firms, but she chose to stay with Morrison and Blake. They're giving her the Thompson case. You know, the Thompson pharmaceutical lawsuit? $50 million. The women cooed appropriately. "And you have another daughter, don't you?" one of them asked. I thought I remembered meeting her at the museum fundraiser a few years ago. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "We had another daughter," my mother said carefully. "Rachel. She's not in our lives anymore. She made some very poor choices and decided to distance herself from the family. It's been difficult, but we focus our energy on the child who appreciates what we've given her." Poor choices. As if having a mental health crisis was a character flaw. As if leaving to save my own life was abandonment. "How sad," one woman murmured. "It is what it is," my father's voice joined in. He'd moved over to the group. "Some people are built for success, others aren't. Victoria takes after her mother's side. Brilliant, ambitious, focused. Rachel was always more sensitive, couldn't handle pressure, dropped out of school, tried to start some business that failed spectacularly. Last we heard she was waitressing somewhere in Portland." Portland. I'd never even been to Portland. They didn't know the first thing about my life. "We don't talk about her much," my mother added. "Tonight's about celebrating what we have, not mourning what we lost." I realized I was gripping my tablet so hard my knuckles were white. Jordan appeared at my elbow. "Hey, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I managed. "Just making sure everything's perfect." "It is perfect. You've outdone yourself." He paused. The Montgomerys seemed pleased. "Mrs. Montgomery was just telling me how impressed she is with Rising Tide's work. Said she might want to get involved with our board." The irony was so thick I could choke on it. My mother, wanting to join the board of the organization I'd built. The organization that existed to help people like me, people her own daughter, people she'd dismissed and discarded. "That's wonderful," I said automatically. Dinner was served. I watched them eat the meal I'd carefully planned. Watched them laugh and toast and bask in the attention. Victoria gave a speech about her parents' incredible example of commitment and success, about how they'd taught her that hard work and excellence were the only acceptable standards. She didn't mention me once. It was like I'd never existed. After dinner, as guests mingled and the dancing began, a man in an expensive suit approached my parents' table. I recognized him immediately, even though I'd only met him once. David Chen, CEO of Chen Medical Technologies. My grandmother's nephew, my mother's cousin, though the families had been estranged for years over some business dispute I'd never fully understood. He was also one of Rising Tide's largest donors, and the person who'd connected me with half of our corporate sponsors. Kenneth, Patricia, David said coolly. Congratulations on 30 years. My father stood, extending his hand somewhat stiffly. David, thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you'd accept the invitation. I almost didn't, but when I heard Rising Tide was coordinating, I couldn't resist. They're doing incredible work. David's eyes scanned the room and landed on me across the ballroom. His face lit up. In fact, let me introduce you to the founder. Rachel. Every cell in my body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't. I crossed the room with as much grace as I could muster, feeling like I was walking through water. Mr. Chen, I said professionally, reaching him. Rachel, I want you to meet Kenneth and Patricia Montgomery. Kenneth, Patricia, this is Rachel Chen, the brilliant woman behind Rising Tide. She's revolutionizing how we think about mental health support and career recovery. I watched the recognition fail to dawn on my parents' faces. They looked at me with polite interest, nothing more. Chen, my father said, are you related to David? Distantly, I said, which was true. We share a great-grandmother. Rachel's being modest, David said. She's also the author of Rising After Falling, which is reshaping corporate wellness programs across the country. Boeing just adopted her framework for their entire employee support system. How impressive, my mother said in that way that meant she was impressed with the accomplishment but not with the person. You must have gone to Harvard, or Stanford? Actually, I didn't finish my undergraduate degree, I said, watching for their reaction. I dropped out during a mental health crisis, spent months barely functioning. My family wasn't supportive, so I had to figure it out alone. That's why I started Rising Tide, to help people who fall through the cracks when traditional support systems fail them. My father's expression flickered with something almost like discomfort, but not recognition. Well, good for you for turning your life around. Though finishing school would have been the smarter path, my mother added. There's no substitute for proper credentials. Before I could respond, Victoria appeared with a handsome man I assumed was Marcus. Mommy, Marcus wants to meet the Morrison partners. Do you know where they're sitting? She looked right at me and right through me in the same glance. Victoria, David said warmly. Congratulations on making partner. Your mother's been singing your praises all night. Thank you, Victoria said, finally looking at him. Then her eyes slid to me. Do you work for the event company? Something inside me, some last thread of hope I didn't know I'd been holding, snapped. I own the event company, I said quietly. Well, I co-founded Rising Tide. We do a lot more than events. We provide mental health resources and career support to people recovering from failure. How nice, Victoria said in that dismissive tone I knew so well. Very charitable of you. It's not charity, I said, my voice hardening slightly. It's justice. Someone has to help the people who get thrown away by their families for not being perfect enough. My mother's eyes narrowed slightly. That seems like a very personal mission. It is. I was one of those people. I looked directly at my father. I was the daughter who dropped out, who had a breakdown, who wasn't good enough. The silence that fell over our little group was deafening. My father's face drained of color. Rachel? Hello, Dad. Mom. Victoria. That's impossible, my mother whispered. Rachel was. She gestured vaguely at me. You're not. Not what? Not fat? Not frumpy? Not broken? I smiled without humor. 8 years is a long time. People change when they're not constantly being told they're worthless. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish. But you. We heard you were in Portland. Waitressing. You heard what you wanted to hear because you never bothered to actually check. You just decided I'd failed and moved on with your lives. I turned to David. Thank you for the introduction. I should get back to work. The event isn't over. Rachel, wait, my father said, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. You don't get to touch me. You don't get to suddenly care now that you know I'm not the failure you decided I was. We heard you were struggling. We didn't want to enable destructive behavior, my mother said weakly. Struggling? I was drowning. And instead of throwing me a rope, you held my head underwater and told me I was too weak to swim. The words came out harder than I intended, years of pain sharpening each syllable. Do you know what it's like to hear your mother call you fragile to her friends? To have your father tell people you're not built for success? To watch your sister get everything while you get nothing, not even basic human compassion? Guests were starting to stare. The quartet had stopped playing. Jordan appeared, concerned. Rach, everything okay? Everything's fine, Jordan. Just a family reunion. I laughed bitterly. Jordan, meet my parents, Kenneth and Patricia Montgomery, and my sister Victoria. The family who disowned me 8 years ago when I wasn't perfect enough for them. Jordan's eyes went wide. But you said. I said I'd handle this event personally. And I have. I've given them the perfect party, just like I always tried to give them the perfect daughter, and never quite managed. Rachel, please, my father said, his voice dropping. Can we talk about this privately? Why? So you can preserve the image? So these people don't know that Kenneth Montgomery's other daughter, the one he tells people made poor choices, actually built something that matters? That she helps people you people would step over in the street? We didn't know, my mother protested. You changed your name. You cut us off. How were we supposed to know? You could have tried. You could have reached out. You could have done literally anything other than erase me from your family photos and tell people I was a cautionary tale. I gestured at the timeline display I'd created. Look at your beautiful memory wall. Count how many photos include me after age 17. Go ahead. I'll wait. Victoria finally spoke, her voice shaking. You left us. You walked away. I left because staying was killing me. And you know what? Nobody stopped me. Nobody fought for me. Mom, you changed the locks. Dad, you told me I was on my own if I couldn't get it together. Victoria, you told me I was embarrassing the family. That's not fair, Victoria said. We were trying to motivate you to do better. No, you were trying to mold me into something I wasn't. And when I broke under the pressure, you threw me away. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. But here's the thing. I'm glad you did. Because it forced me to figure out who I really was without your voices in my head telling me I'd never be good enough. I built Rising Tide from nothing. I wrote a book that's helping thousands of people. I found my purpose. We're proud of you, my father tried. No, you're not. You're surprised. You're caught off guard. But you're not proud. Because if you were capable of being proud of me, you would have been proud of me when I needed it. When I was struggling and scared and trying my best. David cleared his throat. Perhaps we should give you all some space. No need, I said. I've said what I needed to say. The party's almost over anyway. I looked at my parents one last time. I hope you enjoyed your anniversary celebration. Rising Tide will send the final invoice next week. I'll make sure Jordan handles the follow-up. I won't be taking on any more Montgomery family events. I started to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and Mom? About that board position you mentioned to Jordan? Rising Tide's board has strict ethical requirements. All members must demonstrate a commitment to supporting people regardless of their past failures or mental health struggles. I don't think you'd be a good fit. I didn't wait for a response. I walked across the ballroom, my head high, and found Jordan near the coat check. I'm sorry, I said. I should have told you. Are you kidding? Jordan said, his eyes bright. That was the most badass thing I've ever seen. Though I wish you'd warned me I was coordinating your family's party, I would have put extra salt in your dad's soup. I laughed, surprising myself. Can you handle the wrap-up? I need to get out of here. Already done. Go. I'll text you tomorrow. I collected my coat and stepped out into the cold December night. Snow was starting to fall, soft and quiet. My phone buzzed. A text from David Chen. Proud of you, cousin. Your grandmother would be too. Call me Monday. We need to talk about something she left for you. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. My grandmother had passed away 2 years ago, but I'd been too afraid to attend the funeral, knowing my parents would be there. I'd mourned alone, keeping even Jordan at arm's length during that grief. Monday came. I met David at a coffee shop in downtown Seattle, neutral territory. Your grandmother left you something, he said without preamble, sliding an envelope across the table. I've been holding it per her instructions. She specified I was to give it to you on your 28th birthday, when you were old enough to handle it wisely but young enough to enjoy it properly. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter in my grandmother's handwriting and several legal documents. "My dearest Rachel," the letter began. "If you're reading this, you've survived. I always knew you would. You have my stubbornness, though your mother never wanted to see it. Your grandfather and I set up a trust fund for you years ago, before you were born. Your mother never knew about it because she would have tried to control it. The fund is substantial, approximately $2.3 million, with growth over the years. It's yours free and clear on your 28th birthday. Use it to continue your good work. Help others who fall like you did. And remember, being different from your family doesn't make you broken. It makes you free. I love you always, Gran." I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. "She was furious when she found out how they treated you," David said quietly. "She tried to reach out to you, but you'd changed your number. She asked me to find you, and when I did, she made me promise not to tell your parents. She wanted you to have this without their interference. $2.3 million, I whispered. "Actually, with the recent market performance, it's closer to 2.8 now. All legally documented. Uncontestable. Your name only." I looked up at him. "My parents. Do they know?" "They found out last week. Your grandmother's estate attorney was required to notify all family members of trust distributions. Your mother called me 4 times demanding I convince you to invest it in Victoria's law firm or your father's practice." He smiled grimly. "I told her it wasn't my business what you did with your money. That explained the sudden party invitation. The timing made sense now. They hadn't wanted me there to celebrate. They'd wanted me there because they'd just discovered I had nearly $3 million and they wanted access to it. They were going to try to convince me at the party," I said slowly. "Most likely. Your mother mentioned something about family obligations and making up for past mistakes with wise investments." I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all. They'd erased me, thrown me away, mourned me as a failure, and the moment they discovered I had money, suddenly I was worth their time again. "I know what I'm going to do with it," I said. "Over the next 6 months, I used my grandmother's gift to transform Rising Tide. We opened 3 new offices in cities with high dropout rates. We established a scholarship fund for people wanting to return to school after mental health crises. We launched a fellowship program for therapists specializing in family trauma. And we created the Patricia Montgomery Memorial Fund. I used my mother's name deliberately because I knew it would burn specifically for young women escaping narcissistic family dynamics. When the press release went out announcing the fund, my phone rang within an hour. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. She called 4 more times that day. My father called twice. Victoria sent a long text about family and forgiveness and how much they missed me. I blocked all their numbers. Jordan found me in my office, staring at my phone. "They're trying to reach you?" "Of course they are. I used my mother's name for a fund that calls out everything she represents. It's already getting media attention." "You're trending on LinkedIn," Jordan said, showing me his phone. 3 major news outlets want interviews about family estrangement and toxic achievement culture." "Good," I said. "Let's do them. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure every person out there who's been told they're not good enough by their own family knows they're not alone." The first article came out 2 weeks later in Forbes, Rachel Chen, from family scapegoat to mental health advocate. It detailed my story without names at first, but I decided to use them in the interview. Kenneth and Patricia Montgomery, Victoria Montgomery, the golden child who'd been groomed for success while I was treated as disposable. The article went viral. My inbox flooded with messages from people sharing their own stories. Therapists reached out wanting to collaborate. Other organizations asked about partnership opportunities. And 3 literary agents contacted me about writing a follow-up book, specifically about recovering from family trauma. My parents released a statement through their lawyer claiming the article was defamatory and a biased misrepresentation of a complicated family situation. Victoria posted on social media about the importance of privacy and how one-sided narratives can be harmful. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The work spoke for itself. A year after that anniversary party, Rising Tide had helped over 5,000 people. We'd placed 200 people back in school. We'd counseled 300 through family estrangement decisions. And we'd raised over $8 million from donors who believed in what we were doing. I was sitting in my office when Jordan knocked. "You have a visitor. She says she's your sister." My stomach clenched. "Tell her I'm not available." I did. "She's been waiting in the lobby for 3 hours. She says she'll wait as long as it takes." I sighed. Fine. Send her in. Victoria looked different. Thinner. Tired. Her expensive designer aesthetic had been replaced with simple jeans and a sweater. She sat across from my desk without being invited. Thank you for seeing me, she said quietly. You've got 5 minutes. I'm in therapy now. Have been for 6 months. Working through a lot of things. She twisted her hands in her lap. I'm realizing how messed up our family was. How messed up I was. How much I participated in hurting you. I said nothing. Mom and Dad are furious about your fund, about the articles. Dad's law practice has lost 3 clients over it. Mom got removed from 2 charity boards. She looked up at me. They sent me here to convince you to stop. To make peace. To say it was all a misunderstanding. And are you going to try to convince me? No. She shook her head. I'm here to tell you I'm sorry. Really, genuinely sorry. I was awful to you. I said terrible things. I participated in this. This system where you were the scapegoat and I was the golden child. And I didn't question it because I benefited from it. You're right. You did. I know you probably won't forgive me. I'm not asking you to. I needed to say it. Needed to acknowledge what I did. She stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm proud of what you've built. Rising Tide is incredible. The work you're doing matters. Victoria, I said as she reached the door. Are you still talking to them? Mom and Dad? She turned back. Not really. I moved out of the condo they were paying for. Got my own place. They're not happy about it. They keep saying I'm being influenced by Rachel's bitterness. And maybe I needed some of that bitterness. Maybe I needed to see things clearly instead of through their filter. She smiled sadly. I read your book, all of it. I saw myself in the parts about the golden child, how they set me up to fail too, just in a different way. How I was never really loved for myself, just for how well I performed my role. Welcome to clarity, I said. It's painful, isn't it? Excruciating, but necessary. She hesitated. If you ever want to get coffee sometime, just to talk, not to fix anything or force a relationship, I'd like that. But I understand if you don't. I considered her for a long moment. Maybe someday. But not yet. I'm still healing. I understand. Take all the time you need. She left quietly, closing the door behind her. Jordan appeared moments later. You okay? Yeah, I said, surprised to realize it was true. I actually am. That night, I sat down and wrote the opening to my second book. The family you're born into is an accident of genetics. The family you choose is an act of love. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who make you feel small, even if they share your DNA. Especially if they share your DNA. I thought about that scared, broken girl who'd left her parents' house 8 years ago with nothing but a duffel bag and a certainty that she couldn't survive another day in that house. I thought about how far she'd come, how far I'd come. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Your grandmother would be so proud of you. Hell, I'm proud of you. I smiled and typed back. Thanks. I'm proud of me too. And I was. For the first time in my life, I was genuinely, completely proud of who I'd become. Not because my family validated me. Not because I'd proven them wrong. But because I'd built something real. Something meaningful. Something that helped people who'd been where I'd been. I'd turned my pain into purpose. My rejection into redemption. Not theirs, mine. And that was worth more than any inheritance, any recognition, any family approval could ever be. I'd won. Not by showing up at their party and exposing them. Not by having money or success or recognition. I'd won by becoming someone I actually liked, someone I was proud to be, someone who used her worst experiences to help others survive theirs. I'd won by choosing myself. Finally, completely, unapologetically. And I was never looking back.